Welcome to the Root of It All podcast with Tree, where you will learn new habits for human betterment. We talk about all things related to personal growth, and everything is on the table. Each episode will explore different topics like self-care, mindfulness, goal setting, and more, with a focus on practical tips and actionable advice you can start implementing in your life today. Our goal is to help you become the best version of yourself and live a more meaningful life. So grab a drink, cozy up, take your dog for a walk, or go for a drive. Join us for some fun and meaningful conversations with some amazing humans. Let's grow together. Hello, everyone. This is Tree from The Root of It All with Tree, and here we are today, a very special human being that holds a beautiful piece in my heart. She makes me laugh. We're very much kindred spirits. And so this is Cyndi Tryon, and she is the owner of Kahshe Hypnosis up north. And she's part of our Master Hypnotist Society, Master Hypnotist Society Canada, and Hypnosis Training Canada with our mentor, Robbie Spear Miller. So, hey, Cyndi, so excited to have you here on our podcast.
Hey, Miss Tree. I'm so grateful to be here today.
So today we're going to be talking about some really good themes for every single human being to learn and grow from. And so Cyndi's going to share her story and some things that she grew through so that some of you can learn how to grow through it yourself as well. So let's just dive right in. Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. So a big thing that pops up a lot is about boundaries. So first teach us about where you didn't have the boundaries, and then teach us how you put those boundaries in place.
So the biggest thing, I took my role as a mom very seriously, that I wanted to be the best mom. And what happened was I literally took over my children's worlds. So I was trying to micromanage absolutely everything to make sure that they thought I was the best mom in the world, the best grandmother in the world, and probably gave them so much advice they didn't need. And I really truly wasn't allowing them to experience life the way that they needed to, and had no idea probably the harm that I caused in the world. And maybe harm isn't the word that I need to use, but I probably didn't allow them the experience of just growing through things. So I was always there to help with words rescue. I was always in rescue mode. And, I always felt a lot of guilt for a lot of actions in their world. So I was always feeling bad. So I played the martyr or the victim really well.
Well, and the interesting thing, so Scott McFall, which is also part of our group, well, he's the founder of Master Hypnotist Society. And his quote is, maturity is moving through frustrated desire alone. So what it was is that you were taking it away from them in terms of allowing them going through their own frustrated desire alone. So yeah, so it's very important that all humans get to have that experience. And it's common for moms, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can totally relate to what it is that you're talking about. So yeah, so how did you create the boundaries then?
So it was really working through the Virginia Satir model. What was I, where was I? And a lot of it.
So teach people what the Virginia Satir model is.
So Virginia Satir has a metaphor that she uses, and there's 4 people in a boat. And in the boat, there's a hole in the boat, and the person at the end, who's the blamer, points to the fellow at the other end of the boat and says, you did this, you put the hole in the boat. And the person at the end, who's the distractor, looks around and says, wow, do you guys see the clouds? Isn't it a great day today? Even though he knows the hole is in the boat, he's just looking at the clouds. And then the person who I mostly was the person jumping out of the boat, throwing my life jacket into the boat, saying, please save yourselves. Without my weight in the boat, you should be able to get to shore. And oh, by the way, I left my lunchbox in the kit there too. So please help yourselves and don't worry about me. And the other person is staring at the hull of the boat and saying, well, in about 3.1 minutes, we'll be at the bottom of the lake.
Mhm.
So I actually moved around the boat quite often, but my favorite spot to be in the boat was the person that was always jumping out of the boat and, please save yourselves, and feeling bad about it. Oh, you left me in the water? Are you kidding me? Like there was this
Right.
thing like,
So you'd actually jump off and sacrifice yourself so that other people, and they're not actually, because the boat's still sinking
yeah.
regardless, even if your weight's there or not. And
Mhm.
and then you'd get pissed at like, well, why did you leave me here in the water, even though
Of
you jumped
course.
into the water? Yeah, so and I'm sure tons of people can relate to this in terms of jumping in, pleasing, fixing, and then all of a sudden taking a step back and ending up in anger and resentment and guilt,
Mhm.
right? It's anger, resentment, guilt, or guilt, resentment, anger, or a combination, and it's like a big shit show soup of emotions. Yeah.
For sure. And I was dripping in it all the time. Like I would never get dried off from the
Mhm.
water. It would be just a continuous. And how easy it was to blame everyone else for the action. So I would move back and forth between the two, but not realizing that I was blaming. I had no concept until we got to understand the Virginia Satir
Mhm.
model. So, and then it
And
was
that's
really learning about, okay, so what am I doing at this particular time? Who am I being in the boat
Mhm.
right now?
And so how, like from an energy point of view, were you exhausted at the end of each day?
I was exhausted. I
Mhm.
was in overwhelm. I cried a lot. No confidence. Um, and I just felt like a whipping board. Like it was just like everything was coming at me. And
Mhm.
what I didn't realize that it was doing it to myself. No one else was doing it to me. It was all me. And
Mhm.
boy, that was a tough pill to swallow. Like there's a
Yeah.
huge denial that happened.
So yeah, so this is a really good segue into the next thing that you and I wanted to talk about in terms of people leveling with what's going on. So it took you, what you're saying is it took you a little bit of time to level with what exactly was going on and that you were actually the one that was doing it. So teach us a little bit about that, how you moved through those emotions of leveling with yourself. And then also too, uh, what we were talking about just before we hopped on here is about you getting your kids to level with what was going on as well.
Mhm. So it, I think the biggest takeaway with me was as I was going through it, really stopping and being curious about where the behavior in myself was welling up from, like what was really happening, and almost floating outside myself to have a look at myself to see what was
Mhm.
going on. And I'm not gonna lie that a couple times when I truly knew I was having a maturity drama, and I probably have because we do have the video in our offices where I literally go into my office, lay on the floor and say,
Mhm.
okay, now really have a temper tantrum because that's what you're having with the world. And and then when it came to the kids, really taking a step back and letting them work through things that sometimes was not pretty. Um, I'm
Yeah,
not
so what you're talking about is that what happens is when somebody creates boundaries and they level with themselves, all of a sudden the people around them, their behavior starts to shift and change as well. And sometimes not for the better.
sure.
Sometimes it's like, so you basically took a step back, took the observer role to have a look at what was going on and recalibrating, whether you're laying on the floor, giving giving yourself permission to have that temper tantrum to move through that emotion. That's awesome. And and then the behaviors around you was another layer, but you chose to stay in the observer role. You know,
Mhm.
of course you love and care about your kids, but it is more useful to stay in that observer role and allow them to go through. So now, tell us now how your relationships are with them.
It was very interesting on how stepping back and allowing them to be the messy humans that they are,
Hmm.
and knowing that they're going to be okay, and that if they came to me for some um, conversation, that I could have a conversation with them, but I didn't have to be the fixer anymore. I didn't have to, be the hero, because they don't need a hero.
Mm-mm.
What they needed was just to experience things and be really proud of themselves that they made it through. And that's been really cool for me, that, you know, we did a good job of raising our little humans.
Hmm.
They're great people, and they are all doing very well. And I think by stepping back and allowing them the last few years, it's really allowed me to see how incredibly awesome they all are at even figuring out things on their own. It just makes me go, wow, look, they can do it. I did give them the tools, and those tools I gave them from 0 to 6. I didn't give them to them when they were, 25 and 30. They already had them
Hmm.
there. And I just needed to trust that they knew what to do with them.
So you were,
So,
yeah, so you were even more proud of them
mhm.
because they were doing things on their own. And just for people and to get the context, so Cyndi has 4 kids. Ages, what are their ages?
So my youngest is going to be 30 this year.
Hmm.
And then we have 35, 36, and my oldest daughter will be 40 this year.
Hmm.
And we
Which
have 8 grandbabies.
yeah, eight grandkids. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And so the next thing that we want to talk about in terms of, so you moved through that, you leveled with that, created the boundaries needed. And then all of a sudden it gave you an opportunity to step into your own. So teach us what that experience was like when you were in so much discovery. Like, how is it that you transitioned? How did you try things on for yourself? Teach people about that.
So one of the things I remember, we had horses when the kids were growing up. And
Hmm.
I had this one horse that would always break the fences. And I felt a lot like him when I was doing this, when I was setting the boundaries. So we put electric fence up for the horses, because we were close to the highway.
Hmm.
This one horse, the other horses were like, as soon as they heard the click, 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 they were like, no problem. But Mikey would hit the fence and flip himself over, hit the fence, flip himself over. And he would do this like day, an ongoing thing. And when I was doing the boundary things, like trying to set the boundaries, like for the kids and for myself, I kept for the first little while hitting the electric fence for myself, until I realized I didn't need to hit it anymore. And when I realized that I was okay and I was safe in my world, I actually became more confident. I was able to really embrace this new way of living where, it's okay not to really engage in, if somebody's having a bad day, it's okay for me not to feel that emotion. I don't have to get involved in the emotion. So it was amazing that I could release guilt. I could release shame.
Hmm.
I could be a lot more curious about things and in a state of discovery. And um, I really didn't have to give the conversation that I always thought I needed to have,
Hmm.
right? So,
And teach us about how you got yourself into curiosity and discovery, and how what it was that you had to experience to allow yourself to stay there on a constant basis.
so in the beginning, I didn't understand how to be curious. I didn't understand the concept of it.
Mhm.
Just because I was always in the middle of it, I did not. And so what I did do is I actually went and sat on a bench and watched people go by and said, okay, so observe these people and really make stories up about them and, and just really be observing what's happening and imagining that I had duct tape on my mouth so that I could.
I wish I could have seen you on the bench pretending you had duct tape on your mouth. That would be quite the scene.
Yeah. So, but and it allowed me to be still and quiet because it was like I always had something to say, like even in my mind's eye, right? I was always like chattering. So it was cool to be quiet and still and just to watch. And that was a big muscle that I had to build where even, and it was almost like sometimes um as a kid, maybe learning that you had to be in the one-up position all the time. Like,
Mhm.
try, if you had something to say, I could say something. Well, I did this, right? And
Mhm.
learning just to be quiet and listen to what other people have to say.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's a really powerful thing. And I too actually went through that learning. I remember we did this excursion. It sounds like we had a field trip with our mentor, Robbie Spear Miller, and literally we did. And it's so much fun. She has these great learning. Are they called field trips? I guess so. And anyways, they're fun. They're super fun. We've done a bunch of them. But this one particular one, we went to go experience horses and the energy around horses. And it was interesting because I'm normally the entertainment of like, I'm very high energy. I can walk into any room, start a conversation with anybody at all. And, that's just sort of the way that I'm wired to some capacity. And so when we were there with the horses out in this beautiful pasture, and we're taking turns with each individual, like being with the horses. And so when it wasn't my turn and I was sitting back, the objective was to just sit there exactly what you're saying, like you did on that bench and observe. And for me, I was constantly like just chatting or whatever. And finally Robbie turns to me and she's like, shh, just do nothing. And I'm just like, in that moment, I was like, huh, that's an option. Okay. Like, because it never really dawned on me because I was always a certain way and I was getting away with it so much that it was cool to find that I actually had another option. And
Mhm.
so just sitting there, it was very peaceful and very nice. And I do that way more often. Even, anybody that follows me on Instagram knows I'm out every single morning and it's a movement thing for me. So to just sit still is another option, opportunity, another experience. So it's very cool. But it was just so funny. She's like, shh. She's like, I was like, it's so subtle, but yet so effective. It was hilarious. So yeah. And so it's an interesting thing and about I want to loop back around in terms of the Virginia Satir and being a pleaser. Okay. So teach us what like so you have your own hypnosis clinic in what city again? I ask you this every time I see you.
I'm in Orillia, Ontario.
Oh, so little side segue story. So I had a friend of mine that lived in Orillia, and every time I drove up there um to see her, way back in the day, all there was radio. There wasn't any of these like technology things that we have nowadays. So you'd listen to the radio, and the radio stations, they didn't go as far as the radio stations now. So depending on as you're driving out of the city, you had to change the station to get to the local station city. So I remember driving into Aurelia and the radio station, as soon as it would go to commercial, and the whole radio station would be, say it with me now, Aurelia. For whatever reason, to this day, whenever I hear the word Orillia, it reminds me of that because it was the most comedic thing I've ever heard on the radio.
Yeah.
And so talk about hypnosis and being in a hypnotic trance about hearing something. And every time I hear it, it reminds me of that exact memory. So in hypnosis and neurolinguistics, we teach about anchors. So the word Aurelia is an anchor, but it's funny that I ask you that all the time and yet I don't remember it. So I purposely wanted to tell that story so that I will remember where you're located. So anyone that's listening to this, if you want to if you constantly can't remember something, create an anchor, create something, whether it's a story, whether it's a body movement, whether it's something that you're doing to create something to help you remind you of that. So say it with me now. Aurelia. So back to the pleasing thing. So you have having your own business, having your own hypnosis business, it's very important that you're also creating the boundaries around clients, right? Because it's unuseful. We want to create a good framework whenever we're onboarding a client. So teach us what you've learned as a business owner and creating boundaries around being a pleaser.
So, and that's a great topic because when I first opened, I wanted to be pleasing everyone, and it didn't work out so great for me. I wasn't really, it wasn't a useful mode for me. So I learned very quickly that that blows up in your face a little bit. So I learned that I had to put the boundary around that, that I just needed to be in a space for my clients, to allow them to move through what they needed to as a coach and not taking on their feelings, their emotions, trying to wrap them in a blanket and cradle them.
Everything's gonna be okay. Yes, it's so it's the same thing that you were talking about with your kids as well, allowing your clients to move through their own frustrated desire alone and teaching them tools and techniques in order to do that as well. Mhm.
Mhm. And interesting, yesterday I
Yeah.
was even doing the anchoring as well to learn to remember some things as well. So that was great that you brought that up.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so teach us about the um using hypnosis to make a lot of the changes in your life. What is teach us about the biggest impact that you've had. Like you told us about some of your journey, but teach us maybe about some aha moments that you had in terms of it could be about hypnosis or a specific technique. Like for me, a huge impact was an NLP technique that we use called timeline, that it definitely changed things for me to really transition out of unuseful emotions and into useful emotions, actions, and all of these things. So, what was the biggest, or maybe there's a couple of them?
My most favorite NLP technique is the circle of excellence,
Hmm.
and where I take the energies you know, of all the important people for even the day that I need.
Hmm.
So I actually almost use it daily now. And a funny story, Tree, a couple years ago, I had to go to Bangkok and
Hmm.
I was terrified because I had 5 flights and that I'd be missing flights and Robbie,
That's an adventure.
it
You're
was,
on an awesome adventure. 5 flights. That's awesome.
I was going to Bangkok and ending up in Bali. And so Robbie said to me, Cyndi, just use your circle of excellence, you know, model someone, put somebody, take their energy, put it in there in your circle of excellence and use it. So Tree, you were my inspiration.
I was in your circle. Little did I know.
My
You
circle.
jammed me in your circle and brought me to Bali. I would have brought a bikini had I known. Had I known. Had I
I
known.
don't know. So I'm in the Vancouver airport. and I'm literally got my hands in the air running down this long laneway. And at the end of it, there was this case, and they have all kinds of little figurines of the Walt Disney, um, or yeah, well,
The
I think
Disney characters?
the Disney characters, Mickey Mouse and
Donald Duck, Daffy, all those.
Donald Duck, and they were all these little. So when I got there, I started laughing because I made it there, and because the other technique is where we shrink people down and turn
Yeah.
them into a cartoon.
Yeah.
And
Changing
when
submodalities, it's called. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so and we shrunk so it was like I had all the figurines there. So it was all the people in my life because there was cases and cases that I could do that and I could hear all the things. And just I just had such a fun adventure doing just being able to take that circle of excellence with me
Mhm.
and being able to be perfectly okay. And the drama that I made up in my head before I went was just silly.
Right. And so the cool thing is that you found freedom, right?
Mhm.
You're moving your body through the airport. You were looking for things that supported the circle of excellence, that supported the freedom in which you wanted, and as you're getting there, right? And so teach people, let people know. So before we get off, and I appreciate you taking time away to spend with me, with everybody else that's listening. And what would be something that you'd want people to take away from this whole conversation that we're having to better themselves?
The biggest takeaway that I have is just really leveling with yourself, being really true, being authentic, and just recognizing where you're at so that you can move through things in such an easy way. As soon as I embraced that, it's how quickly I can move through things. Where the bell curve of frustration, that when something comes up, I used to stay stuck in the denial and anger, and then I'd go sad. I somehow missed the bargaining thing. I would just go sad.
Mhm.
And now it's as soon as I can feel it, it's like, okay. And then I try on it and I have a look to see where I am and I just move through things so much quicker. And
Mhm.
how I explore life differently now, how I connect with people, um, and how much I enjoy life so much better now.
Absolutely. So, and that's a beautiful, beautiful takeaway. So thank you for that. I just gonna unpack it a little bit for the people that don't know what Cyndi is talking about. It's called the bell curve of frustration. So us as humans, we move through four emotions every single day. There's nothing to do that, there's nothing that you can do to avoid them. It's literally you just go through them every single day. And those four emotions is denial, anger, bargaining, and sadness. And if us as humans, if we are staying stuck there, so many people live their entire life on the bell curve in emotions, and it's unuseful. What is useful is moving over to the other side. So going over the mountain, over the hill, over the bell curve into acceptance. Acceptance is leveling with yourself, understanding really that you do not have to stay in those emotions. People, they can end up staying in unuseful emotions. They can ruin relationships. They can ruin relationships with themselves, even when it comes to weight, right? If people stay in emotional states, a lot of people overeat or um, get into unuseful habits. So, really stepping into acceptance leveling, like exactly what Cyndi was saying, and chasing your goals, chasing your dreams, chasing your outcomes. And it really is a choice. You can choose to stay in unuseful emotions. We as humans, we're in emotional states every moment of every single day, or you can chase your goals, chase your outcomes. And that's really what Cyndi did a beautiful job doing and is modeling for everybody listening here, to really transition from being that pleasing parent to be an independent, beautiful business owner with healthy boundaries, still filled with so much love and caring, and you can hear that in her voice. And I, for one, can definitely, accredit that, just the beautiful energy that you empower within you, around you. And again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Great
Well, thank you so
information.
much for having me.
All right, we're going to have all of her information in the show notes, so you can reach out to her. If you're in Orillia, you can you can visit Kahshe Hypnosis, right? So now everybody's going to hear the Orillia now. I don't even know if they still do that on the radio, but this has got to be at least 20-25 years ago.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for listening.
Well, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of The Root of It All with Tree. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But before we go, I just wanted to remind you that you can follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram. And we will be posting motivational quotes and behind the scenes content that you won't want to miss. You can always sign up to come live while we're filming this, or even join us online through Zoom. We always offer open question and answer after each episode that we don't record, so it's all private, but you can get more involved. So sign up for free at businessgrowthresults.com, and we're going to cover all kinds of different topics that you're not going to want to miss. And if you're looking for that one-on-one guidance or help, be sure to book a free screening. You can do that at burlingtonhypnosis.ca or call 905-634-4777. And finally, you can catch our podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.